the oats from the straw, and the straw would blow in a big pile, and the oats would go in a bin, and you'd haul them away with a wagon, or yeah, usually a wagon. So the combine replaced all of that, those chores, all of those jobs of cutting, binding, shocking, and threshing. The combine was a combination of binder and thresher, and cut the oats and separated it from the straw, and put the oats in a bin, and then dump them into a wagon. And then you came along later and baled the straw and used that for bedding. And that's essentially still done today. But there's not many oats raised. There's mostly soybeans. But the combine does the same thing for soybeans. It cuts them off and threshes them out and separates the hulls and spreads that out behind and puts the beans in a bin, and then you come with usually a truck nowadays, and you put the beans in a truck and you take them either to the farm to store in a bin, or else you take them to the terminal if you're selling them. And yesterday my son had beans down at Gringer's, and the elevator broke down at Gringer's. So he and his farmer neighbors were all standing around visiting while the repairs were made. That's what happens once in a while. But technology has greatly reduced the number of hours you have to spend doing everything. Planting, harvesting, and it allows each individual farmer to farm many more acres than he could years ago. And that technology is continuing to advance. The one thing that's so startling is the technology in the breeding of plants. When I was young, when I first started farming, most farmers planted corn with a check wire. They'd plant 40-inch apart rows, and every 40 inches in the row, the wire would trip the planter, and it would plant a hill of 4 kernels of corn. So you could cultivate the corn going the same way you planted, but you could also cultivate it crossways. And that's how they kept the weeds out in the early days. Well, soon that was abandoned and everything was drilled, and cultivation and herbicides came in. Now everything is drilled and you don't even cultivate anymore. You put on herbicides and pesticides to keep rootworms down, and it's all done with the planter, and you don't have to touch the corn until you go in and harvest it. So it just saves an immense amount of labor. And the only thing the planter does, you can put on fertilizer with the planter, but everybody puts on nitrogen before they plant, and some other fertilizers that pre-plant too.
So, like, besides chores, like, I'm working on.
Well, let me finish up this. I started to tell you about the technology in plant breeding.
Okay.
When I was young, if everything worked right, you got 100 bushels to the acre. That was a good corn crop. And in the 50s and 60s, if you got 125 bushel, or even 150 bushels, that was excellent. Well, just really, since the turn of this century, since 2000, technology has, in plant breeding, has advanced to the stage where you get 200 bushels to the acre of corn now. In the early 2000s, that was really something to get 200 bushels an acre. Now, farmers expect to average 200 bushels to the acre. And this year, we have such an excellent crop that, see, combines have a monitor now, so you can tell how much your yield is right while you're harvesting the corn. And this year they tell me they've had places where the monitor has gone over 300 bushels to the acre, which is just phenomenal. My point is that technology is advancing, so there's more corn being produced than demand, and that's why the price is depressed now. 2 years ago we got $7 a bushel for the corn, and now this year it's about half that, $3.50, because there's just more corn available, even though they use corn for ethanol and other things. There's still going to be a great surplus of corn this year. Now you can go on with your questions.
Alright. Oh, it was besides chores. What personal interest besides flying did you have? Like, I know, like, you were interested in joining the military when you were younger. You're interested in, like, I mean, your life was working on the farm, but do you have any, like, did you like baseball or like any sports? Did you like collecting anything, like something that wasn't farm related?
Yeah.
And mostly those teenage years. You don't have much. I know it's pretty long time ago though.
I wasn't a collector. I tried to make model airplanes, but I wasn't very successful at it. Some people did and were very good at it. I wasn't. But yes, I had a Brownie camera, and I liked to take pictures with my Brownie camera, but there were only 8 pictures to a roll, so you had to be careful. You couldn't shoot indiscriminately like you can today. And then you had to take the roll in and get it developed and get the prints back. You got negatives and you got prints. And we like to play games. Monopoly, when Monopoly first was invented and came out, it was fascinating. And I'd play with my friends. And we liked to play cards. We played rummy and hearts. Those kind of simple card games. Oh, another big activity when I was young was listening to the radio. Because the radio just came into being in the 20s, and in the 30s, then almost every family had a radio, a big console radio. And we'd sit around and listen to the radio, and there were favorite programs every night of the week. There was a Lone Ranger program that us kids liked, and there was Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy. A lot of them originated in WGN in Chicago. And there was Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy on Sunday night. And right about this time of the year, 1939, the War of the Worlds was presented. And that started a panic on the East Coast. People thought it was for real, and it was only radio program when they thought we were being invaded by Mars. Martian people from Mars. Orson Welles did that and made him famous, and then he went on to be a movie star. But that was a big deal in 1939. And of course, then there were movies. Whenever a new movie came out, we'd want to see it. 1939 had Gone to the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. And there were a lot of Mickey Rooney films. And, everybody loved to go to the movies, and you could go to a movie theater and get in for 25 cents. Of course, in the early days, they were black and white. Color came in the 30s, and Gone with the Wind was color, and so was The Wizard of Oz. And of course, I was a teenager when Pearl Harbor happened, World War II started. I was at school at Shattuck in Faribault, Minnesota. I was a junior in high school in 1941. And 42. I graduated in 1943. Of course, during World War II, everyone wanted to help win the war. People at home, many men volunteered. And there was a draft. You could get drafted, but they wouldn't draft women, but they would volunteer for the Women's Army Corps too. But it was mostly men, and everybody that was able-bodied wanted to go to service and help win the war. I wanted to go in the Air Corps, which I did, but not until I was 18. The Marines and the Navy would take young men at 17, but the Army waited until they were 18. My present wife's first husband, was 17 when he went into the Navy and served in World War II. And, well, did I tell you about my World War II experience the other time?
Yeah, I believe
You
so.
told us you
With
went
the
to
Paranera's and trained.
Wanted to go to pre-flight.
Yeah, no, we got 18. That's for the Army at Camp Dodge.
Yeah,
And then you were at Shepherd Field for basic training.
correct.
And then you were at Union of Cincinnati for Air Corps College.
University of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Alright, yeah. Then it closed.
That's
and then,
correct.
And then you went to Perrin.
That's correct.
Alright.
You got all that done. So what are the other questions you have today?
What were all your kids' names?
Kids and grandkids' names.
Okay, we'll start with my oldest son is James Warren Dane. When I was in the Army, my two closest friends were Jim Hutchin, James Hutchin, Hutcheon, and Warren Heath. And Warren Heath was the first one of a trio to get married, so my friend Jim and I sent him a telegram to name the first one Jimmy Joe after the two of us. They called me Joe in the Army. That was my nickname. And he did. So when my first one was born, I named him James Warren after those two men. The only problem was when Jim Hutchin got married, he named his son Jeff. He didn't carry on the tradition. So anyway, that's my oldest son. Now, Jim Dane is married to Ruth, and they have one daughter, Jane Jennifer. They call her JJ. They've called her JJ all her life. JJ grew up and graduated from Iowa and married Eric Severson. And then JJ went to the University of